We begin with what the federal and Ontario governments are calling a game changer for Canada's auto industry. Together, they announced Japanese automaker Honda is investing $15 billion to build 4 new manufacturing plants in Ontario. They'll assemble electric vehicles and make the components that piece the vehicles together. The deal includes both federal and provincial money. Ottawa will provide an estimated $2.5 billion in tax credits, and Ontario will match that more or less through direct and indirect incentives. François-Philippe Champagne is the Federal Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, and he joins me now. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, and you know, great to be on the factory floor here in Alliston.
Yeah, every time we do an interview now, Minister, it's at a noisy place, and this one is going to be a pretty busy place after the announcement today. It's $2.5 billion from the federal government in this supply chain investment tax credit that was announced in the budget. Should we now conclude this was designed specifically for Honda when it was put in the budget a week or so ago?
Listen, this is an historic day for Canadian workers. As you said, this is the single largest investment in the auto industry. It is the largest investment by Honda in their 75 years history. Listen, it's just a testament to the quality of workers we have in Canada. You're right. You know, we've put in place programs that would make sure we can attract these investments. But let me tell you, what is attracting these investments is really the quality of our workers. And I went there 2 years ago. I was with the chairman of Honda in Tokyo. And I remember at the time I was pitching Canada, our workers, our critical minerals, renewable energy, access to market. And he said, Minister, I heard you, just be patient. And I can tell you today, this was patience well rewarded, because what you have now is an anchor investor that's going to have rippling effects for generations. You're talking about thousands and thousands of jobs, because it's not only about one plant. This is going to be 4 different plants that are going to be here. And obviously, it's going to have a rippling effect to the entire supply chain. Because as you may recall, when I started as industry minister, there were some people wondering, would that be the end of our auto sector? And obviously now we've seen that this is the rebirth of the auto sector. We see companies like Honda doubling down, tripling down on Canada, Volkswagen, GM, Ford, Stellantis. Listen, the workers behind me, I can tell you, David, they've never been more happy. They understand that we believe in them, the nation believes in them, Honda believes in them, and we're going to lead this EV manufacturing here in Canada.
So, Minister, it's the full meal deal from Honda, right? It's a battery plant, it's a vehicle assembly plant, and it's other components feeding into the supply chain. And you're only on the hook for about $2.5 billion in tax credits there. If you look at the Volkswagen deal you did in St. Thomas, it's up to $13 billion in production subsidies. So do you reconsider the value of those deals for just a battery plant when you look at the benefit you're getting for a much smaller investment here today?
Well, I would say everything is different. All these deals are different. This is the biggest deal we've done on very competitive terms. What you have to appreciate also is that when we started to position Canada as a destination of choice for these battery investment, the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States was there. We said at the time from the get-go, we would be strategic, we'd be limited, we would choose our partners. But obviously, when you look at the investment of Honda, by the time they come online, the investment tax credit in the United States, the IRA, would be largely at the end of the subsidy period. So it's a different deal, but it's a great deal for Canadians, because each of these deals are feeding on each other to build, because it's not just about Honda or Volkswagen or Stellantis, GM and Ford. It's about the entire supply chain in the country. When you see, when the world see that a company which is as highly regarded as Honda choosing Canada after Dow Chemical in Alberta, after BHP in Saskatchewan, after Nordvolt in Quebec, it sends a very, very strong message that we are the place to invest in the world.
So, Minister, on this, about 1,000 jobs is what Honda is saying across the 4 different locations that are associated with this announcement today. But there's going to be a construction phase and a construction component of this. And with the Stellantis arrangement, there's been criticism that a lot of the jobs associated with this, despite big Canadian subsidies, are going to non-Canadian workers. And people, I think, were surprised to learn after the fact on some of the earlier deals that there was a foreign worker component to it. What's the foreign worker component for the Honda arrangement that you've agreed to here? What percentage will it be? What numbers will it be?
I would say let's put things in perspective. By the way, we work very well with CBTU. We're on the same side. I've been talking to the CEO of Stellantis in North America. When you're talking about foreign worker on construction side, you're talking about 72 people out of 2,000 construction workers currently, and more than 5,000 that are going to be operating at the Stellantis plant. So let's make sure that we keep things in perspective. My job is to maximize jobs for Canadians. Obviously, that's what we do. That's what we do with Stellantis. That's what we're doing, obviously, here with Honda. But let's be clear, this is more than 1,000 jobs. This is tens of thousands of jobs for the next 30, 50 years, because it's not only about the jobs today, but the jobs you're creating for generations to come. There's folks in the line that told me, Minister, my son or my daughter will be able to work here, and probably their son and daughter, because when you make an investment of that magnitude, remember the word of the CEO of Volkswagen, who said, when you invest something like, in their case, was around 7 billion, this thing you're talking 15, he said, we're going to be here for a century. And just to give a perspective on numbers, because I know you like that, David, but just look at their current operation. The plant you're seeing here and what they do, over the last 10 years, they've invested north of $15 billion already in salaries and in their supply chain. So imagine when you bring another 4 plants that are going to come here. This is going to have rippling effect not only in Alliston and Ontario, but across the nation. This is really building for the future, and I think, as Canadians, we don't celebrate too often. We're humble, but today it's really to give, every workers you see, you should give them a tap in the back and say, good job, because, thanks to their expertise behind me, they're the ones who won what we have today. They make us win. Those are the workers who make us win.
No, Minister, I appreciate all of that, and we heard similar things in the other announcements, but what we didn't hear at that time was the temporary foreign worker component, and I appreciate your argument. It is a small percentage of the whole, but it's something we all learned about after the fact, and it caused a little bit of controversy. So where is that in this arrangement? Is it going to be a similar thing where Honda needs to bring workers over from Japan or from other countries with their partners to set up certain equipment? What will those numbers be? I mean, is that settled? Do we know what that would be?
But, David, if I may, there's nothing new in that. The workers know that. I mean, we had Canadians working south of the border. We had people south of the border coming in Canada when you have these plants. When these plants are being built, you need to adjust equipment to maintain warranty. You need, we've been doing that for decades. And we send people abroad, some people come. We know these things. And that's why we've been working with the unions to make sure that we maximize that in the construction phase. CBTU is talking to Honda as they're talking to Stellantis. Listen, we're all on the same side on that. There's no space between us. We're working with CBTU. We're working with the unions. We all want the same things, and the workers know that. These folks know that. Some of our guys have gone abroad as well, so they know that how these things operate, and we're going to maximize jobs for Canadians. That's our mission. That's what we do.
Okay, I'm raising it only because the Canada's Building Trades Union have raised it in association with the other plans, and I know you say you're dealing with them, but they've raised concerns about it, so I was just trying to get some clarity on how it may apply here. But
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I wonder.
But you should look at their current statement. They're very happy of what we're doing together. There was the letter, but you look at their latest statement. They know we put them, we've been working with them, I have been talking to them, my team has been working with them. We're all in this together. We all want the same thing. There's no division there. We all want the same thing. We're working on the same direction. And look at their latest comments. They know we are on the same side on this.
So, Minister, you've gone all in on electric vehicles as an industrial policy and as an investment sector by the government. And you still have the electric vehicle adoption targets that you're hoping to hit as a country. And there is skepticism about that because of softer markets and slower uptake on electric vehicles, driven in some cases, people argue, by a lack of charging capacity. The last time we spoke was before the budget, and it was when the Ford announcement had been made in Oakville that they were delaying things for a couple of years. I don't see a big new investment in charging capacity in the federal budget. Do you need to do that if this plant and these investments are going to pay off, not just in the job creation, but in the electric vehicle adoption this country has set for its emissions reduction targets?
It's a very good question, David. And I think the destination is clear. We're going towards EV vehicle. I feel a bit like Model T with Ford at the time. The destination is clear. This is where the world is going. Now, different manufacturers will go at different speed. I think today it's a big vote of confidence when you have a Honda, which is not doubling down but tripling down, almost quadrupling down on Canada. It sends a very strong signal. in the plants they're going to be building, they're going to be producing to 140,000 electric vehicles a year. So this is, if anyone had any doubt, you should just watch the press conference and talk to or listen to the CEO of Honda. We came from Tokyo to say that. On the charging infrastructure, definitely we need to do more. The province, the municipalities, because the destination is clear, and we're going to be working with them to make sure we have that. But today's a great catalyst to say Canada is at the forefront of this electric vehicle manufacturing revolution. And I think it's then a wonderful signal that Canada is attracting record investment after, BHP in mining in Saskatchewan, Dow Chemical in Alberta, Nordvolt in Quebec. Listen, the world is taking notice that, the place to be is Canada. They recognize that we have the best workers. The folks behind me, I trust you. If we have an announcement today, it's because of them, and we're going to continue to support them in every step of the way.
I wonder, Minister, there's an election in a year or so, if the calendar holds, about 18 months from now maximum. The Conservatives have been critical of these deals that you've done with some of the auto companies, in particular because of the foreign worker component that we talked about earlier. I wonder how ironclad and secure the government support for these investments are, and therefore the project itself, given if the next election doesn't go your way. Is there a language there? And will it be all finalized before the election cycle begins in earnest in Canada to secure this investment that you're announcing here today?
Well, there's no wonder there was no Conservative here this morning, believe it or not. If they were to say to these folks that they don't believe in their future, I hope they're not going to walk anywhere close to that. These people believe in their future. We believe in them. We believe in Canadians. We believe in investing. I mean, it's shocking that anyone would say, the world is celebrating what we're doing. You're talking about creating tens of thousands of jobs for the next century. This is amazing. I mean, I cannot imagine anyone in his right mind not being celebrating Canadian workers today. Today, we're celebrating every auto worker in the country and everyone in the supply chain, because folks who work, the people who are on the assembly line understand this is not about slogan or picture. These guys work. They understand. They said, Minister, what you do today is going to secure a job for centuries. So this is a great thing. And like I said, that's why we provided a very stable and predictable environment for investments. It's true in the auto sector. It's true in artificial intelligence. It's true in mining. It's true when it comes to cement and what we've been attracting in terms of other investment across the country. Listen, if there's anyone who doesn't get it, let them speak between themselves. But come here and talk to folks. They'll tell you that the future is right here, right now.
You said, Minister, just as a final point, that in our conversations in the past and again today, that you say you need to be targeted and strategic and limited, and you couldn't go out and chase every possible project because you just couldn't fund the subsidies for all of it. So should we look at this Honda announcement, as significant as it is, as maybe the last of these big auto announcements by your government, or is there the potential for a Toyota, which is, sniffed around, or another company that you might be doing something with, or is this the end of it?
Well, you know me by now, David. I talk to everyone. When I started, we didn't have one, and now we have 4 or 5, and we're counting. Clearly, the big decisions have been made by most of the automakers. Volkswagen chose Canada, GM, Ford, Stellantis, Nordvolt, and now we have Honda. So I would say, you're going to see 1 or 2 of these plants in North America, and I would say Canada has been punching above its weight, and it's thanks really to the folks behind me. So obviously we're engaging with everyone. What I think now we're going to be doing is building the supply chain around, and that's going to be, it's really a turnaround for the auto sector like we've never seen before. To think that in 2024 we could attract the largest single investment. Just a few years ago, no one would have believed that, but we made it. The ones which are working behind me made it. We win because of talent. We win because of them. And today, I think not only Alliston, Ontario, but the whole country is winning. And that's a great success story that it's going to pay dividends for generations to come. Okay, so that's where we should expect the focus to be now, in the supply chain build-up, in building the industries and companies that feed into these big announcements? Yeah, I mean, if you talk to people like, Flavio Volpe of the auto parts manufacturers, other people in the auto sector, they understand that when you have an anchor investors like that, you're going to build the whole ecosystem. That's what we did in aerospace in Montreal. That's what we're doing in the auto sector here. that's why I say this is not just about Honda, but it's about the thousands of jobs that are going to be created, because, you know, when you see a company investing so much, that means it gives confidence to others to follow suit. And that's why I'm so hopeful about what we've seen today. Really a generational investment that, you know, people will be talking about for decades to come. And certainly the folks behind me, I can tell you, they believe in their future, we believe in their future, and we're going to be working with them.
Minister Champagne, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, David. Vic
Fedeli is the Ontario Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and he joins me now. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Wonderful to be here, David. Thank you.
So, Minister, you work for a premier named Ford. Today you're doing a deal with a company named Honda. It's $2.5 billion that we know about. Is that the full extent of the taxpayer commitment from Ontario to this arrangement?
Yeah, look, this is a very meaningful day for families here in Alliston and for Honda and for all the people in Ontario. We're making an investment in the neighborhood of $2.5 billion in direct and indirect incentives, matched by the federal government's tax credits of around the same $2.5 billion.
I wonder, though, Minister, in the past, when you've done deals with electric vehicle battery plants, there were production subsidies at the back end. Will there be production subsidies for Honda, or is this $5 billion the total commitment from the two levels of government here?
Honda's investment is $15 billion, and there are no further investments from the province or the feds other than what was announced today. There's no back-end subsidies. Honda's here because this is the right place to be. You know, a lot of companies that were looking at those U.S. subsidies, I think they've realized now that you're going to make a 50-year decision based on 1 or 2 years of subsidies in the States. It's not worth it when you can come here to Ontario for the talent, the clean energy, the land, all of the critical minerals. We have everything here in Ontario to build an electric vehicle. So that's why they're here. There are no further subsidies.
Okay, so on this, in terms of the jobs that are being created, I mean, compared to the past battery deals, this looks like better value for money, not to criticize the other arrangements, but given the full scope of this and the lower outlay, this seems like a better arrangement for taxpayers. So Honda's estimating it's 1,000 new jobs for the EV and the EV battery manufacturing facilities. Where do you see the spin-off of that in the supply chain and these two other as yet to be announced locations that are part of this deal?
So David, the $15 billion announcement by Honda is for 4 plants. So it is for a vehicle assembly plant here in Alliston, a battery plant here in Alliston, a joint venture with a company called POSCO from Korea, and they will make a cathode, and that's in a city that will be announced shortly. And it's also a joint venture with a Japanese company called Asahi Kasei in a community that will be announced later. So the $15 billion and the $5 billion in incentives covers all 4 of those plants. So the 1,000 jobs that are created here in Alliston and the jobs that will be announced in those other 2 communities, that's already included in the dollar value that both Honda has made today and the province and the feds.
Okay, so the total job creation outside of construction for all 4 facilities is 1,000. Am I understanding that correctly, Minister?
No, the 1,000 is only here in Alliston. The amount of jobs to be created in the other 2 communities, we want to announce those in those individual communities to give those communities something to celebrate as well. But the price tag for those is already included in the $15 billion and in the $5 billion in incentives.
Okay, all right, I got you on that point, but so help me out here. You want to announce those in those other communities. I'm assuming that means they have been picked.
Yeah.
There are dates for those announcements. When are we going to know the more specific details on where these other facilities are going to go?
You'll know those shortly. We're just making final arrangements of trips from Japan, trips from Korea, to make those 2 announcements in those other communities and to join their local mayors and suppliers. So again, you know, this is a $15 billion announcement, not just to create 1,000 jobs, but those other 2 cities, the amount of jobs. There are quite substantial jobs in those other 2 communities as well, are all in the initial investment announcement.
Okay, so Minister, the last news we had on the electric vehicle industry in Ontario wasn't good news. It was the further delay of the Ford retooling at its Oakville plant for the building of electric vehicles. When you look at that delay in Oakville versus this announcement here in Honda, where does that tell us where this sector is going and where the market is for these vehicles? Because Ford is responding to a lower than anticipated market demand here, as at least part of its reasoning. Where do you think this is?
Well, the bottom line is last year EV sales were up 31%. If you look at 2020, where 2.5 million EVs were sold, if you look at 2030, the forecast is 50 million EVs will be sold. You know, we made a business decision to save the 100,000 auto workers in Ontario who are not making EVs. We're able to convert most of those plants to EVs. So this is the business decision that we made to get into the EV market, to be able to save those 100,000 jobs. Turned out we're adding about 30 or 40,000 jobs along the way.
Based on the dollar amounts associated with this, do you feel you may have spent too much on the earlier deals? People will look at $2.5 billion for the full meal deal from Honda at 4 different locations versus the much higher potential subsidies and the infrastructure investments for the other deals, and say these don't match up very well.
Look where we were in 2019. First of all, before our government got elected, we lost 300,000 jobs in Ontario. Since we're elected, we've seen the creation of 700,000 jobs in Ontario. We saw a point in Ontario where Reuters announced there will be $300 million spent on EVs and zero was coming to Canada. So we made a decision to get into the electric vehicle industry, and that brought us from zero to $28 billion in announcements, and now we're at $43 billion coming into Ontario for announcements. So, you know, the first early adopters, yes, they got different kinds of incentives as they were the first in a market that had zero, and now we'll be a well-oiled machine that people are acknowledging worldwide. Ontario is the place they need to be, and those subsidies won't get them here.
Okay, a lot of this is dependent on the transition of the market and people transitioning away from internal combustion engine vehicles to the battery vehicles and eventually the fuel cell vehicles. This is part of the pressure of carbon pricing, the carbon tax, is to incentivize people to move away from gas vehicles to these electric vehicles that you're putting money into to build, and other provinces offer subsidies. You're fighting against the carbon tax, and you've cut the consumer subsidies to buy electric vehicles going back to 2018. How do those measures align with the economic hopes you're pinning on these investments if you're taking away the price pain incentive, arguably, of the carbon tax with your push, and you're not making it affordable for Ontarians to buy these vehicles the way other provinces across the country are doing?
Well, first of all, we've seen Quebec move away from the subsidies as well. From 7,000, they're going to zero in subsidies as well. But we've incentivized Ontario families in many other ways. We've lowered the price of gasoline. We've lowered all kinds of costs for Ontario families by supplying, whether it's childcare or seniors care. All of those things are part of what we've done. But we decided to use Ontario tax dollars to bring those companies here. 100,000 auto jobs were at stake. None of those companies had any plans to move from their combustion engine vehicles into electric vehicle. They would have gone. That's just the blunt reality of it. So not only did we use tax dollars and help save those 100,000 workers, we've added all those tens of thousands of workers. Look at Volkswagen plant. It's going to be built, it's being constructed right now. It's going to be the 4th largest building on planet Earth. In Ontario, we have 700 parts makers, 500 tool and die and mold makers, 400 companies in the mobility sector. What happens to all those companies if we don't have those investments of Ontario into the EV sector? That's where we chose. We chose to back the workers in Ontario, put that money so they have a job.
No, I completely get it from the industrial perspective and the job creation perspective and trying to secure that you're part of the economic transition. But if you want Ontarians to move to electric vehicles to help reduce emissions, at least you mentioned making gas cheaper. If you keep making gas cheaper and take away the federal carbon tax, that reduces the incentives for people to make the transition to non-gas burning cars, does it not? I mean, is one affordability policy working against an industrial policy in Ontario?
Well, we know that electric vehicle cars are being mandated here in Canada, in the US, and all around the world. But what we've done in terms of GHG emissions reductions as well, we've helped companies like Algoma Steel in Northern Ontario and DeFasco in Hamilton convert their coal-burning operations to make electric arc steel. So we have green steel here in Ontario. You look in Kentucky where they have 6% clean energy to make a battery, or other states that have 18% clean energy to make to assemble an auto. You come to Ontario, you make an electric vehicle with clean green steel. You assemble that vehicle with 94% clean electricity here in Ontario, and you make a battery with 100% clean energy. Nowhere else in the world has that kind of capacity to make those clean green electric vehicles. That's why Ontario will make our 30% reduction by 2030, likely be the only province.
Minister Vic Fedeli, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, David.